So I've been preparing a lesson for this week, and we've been talking about the story of Joseph. The lesson that I'm teaching this week is going to be over Genesis 40. I'm not going to teach the whole lesson here, but I just want to kind of go over something that I thought of last night while I was, kind of prepared for my lesson. First, I'm going to read the scripture. So this is Genesis 40, and this is after Joseph was thrown into prison after some lies were told him about him trying to be with his master's wife back in Genesis 39. But Genesis 40 reads, "It came to pass after these things that the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And the Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief butler and the chief baker. So he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison, the place where Joseph was confined. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them. So they were in custody for a while. Then the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, had a dream. Both of them, each man's dream in one night, and each man's dream with its own interpretation. And Joseph came to them in the morning and looked at them, and he saw that they were sad. So he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in the custody of his lord's house, saying, 'Why do you look so sad today?' And they said to him, 'We have each had a dream, and there is no interpreter of it.' So Joseph said to them, 'Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me, please.' Then the chief butler told his dream to Joseph, and said to him, 'Behold, in my dream a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded, it blossomed, shot forth, and clusters brought forth ripe grapes. Then Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said to them, This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Now within 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your place, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand according to the former manner when you were his butler. But remember when it is well with you, and please show kindness to me. Make mention of me to Pharaoh and get me out of this house.'" So that's kind of a key point in this, is that he's asking the cupbearer in Genesis 40:14 to remember me when you get out of here in 3 days. Now in 15, "For indeed I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews, and I have also done nothing here that should put me into the dungeon." And when the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said to Joseph, "I was also in my dream, and there was 3 white baskets on my head. In the uppermost basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, and the birds ate them out of the basket on my head." So Joseph answered and said this is the interpretation of it. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will within 3 days Pharaoh will lift off your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh from you. Now it came to pass on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he had made a feast for all of his servants. He lifted up the head of his chief butler and on of the chief baker among his servants. Then he restored the chief butler to his butlership again, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. So there's a lot of directions that we're going to take this, but there's probably 2 things that I want to talk about. And Genesis 40:14 says, "But remember me when it is well with you, and please show kindness to me. Make mention of me to Pharaoh and get me out of this house." So he's interpreted the dream to the cupbearer, and he wants out of this prison. Now you can see that there's a lot that's happened to Joseph before this. He was sold into slavery. Okay, he kind of did well in the slavery. He still served God, so he found favor with his master. But then his master's wife was coming on to him, and she lied about him, and now he's thrown in prison. And with all the negative things with his family, with his slavery and his imprisonment, Joseph never gets bitter, never gets angry. But instead, he is focusing on the God's work and focusing on the Lord and keeping his hope in him. Because even as he's locked in prison, he approaches them, and he doesn't start complaining about, "You won't believe what she did," or blaming other people for getting there. He's saying he was just stolen out of his land, and he's done nothing to be there. He didn't go into details, start ragging people. He just said that he wasn't supposed to be there, and that he was so focused on others that even in his imprisonment and his sorrow that he could have been trapped in, that he could look at 2 new people that came into the prison and see they were sad. He could look in their faces and see the sad. Now, if you were so wrapped up in your own life, you wouldn't notice these things. You'd be so focused on what's going on with you. So, one, he's, even through all this, he is staying faithful to God. And the other thing that I want to talk about here, well, I guess it kind of just leans into that same thought. You know, so he says, hey, remember me. You're going to get out in 3 days. Remember me and what I've done for you, and I don't deserve to be here. Let the Pharaoh know, get me out of this place, right? So you can imagine the guy leaves in 3 days. He's like, I got you, bud. I'll come back and get you. And then he doesn't. Maybe he gets his stuff together and he waits for the cupbearer to come release him, or somebody from the Pharaoh's court to come release him. And he does it, and another day passes and it doesn't. And you can just imagine the disappointment building up in your life as you're waiting for something to happen. You think it's going to happen right now, but we see here in Genesis, it doesn't happen for another 2 years. And that's definitely probably not the timeline that Joseph would have liked it to happen in, right? And you wonder why. Why Joseph, all these good things are going to happen to Joseph. Why does it have to happen like this? Why does he have to be in prison for 2 years? Why is 2 years the number? Why is it long? Why does it seem like it's always longer than we expect? And I don't know what the answer is. Well, I know the answer, it's God's plan. It's God's timing, not ours. And that can be hard to swallow sometimes. But we're going to wrap it up here. And one thing that I thought about after I kind of studied and I laid down last night was that, you know, at the time that he was locked in prison, waiting for that day for someone to come get him out, he didn't know the effect that he was going to have. All he could see was that he was stuck in prison and that he didn't know when he was going to get out. But what he didn't see is that, you know, thousands of years later, someone like me, someone like you, is sitting here reading his story of his faithfulness and how he took this adversity and he didn't get bitter, he didn't get angry, he kept his hope in God, because people will let you down. The cupbearer will leave you in the prison. And those are things that we have to really focus on, is putting God first. Because people will let you down. Even the most good-willed people are still flawed people, and they will let you down. In closing, talking about this, our preacher kind of charged us with, you know, kind of not revising, but if he invited us that if you didn't have a testimony yet, or maybe if you had testimony that was long, he said that every Christian should have at least, you know, a pretty quick 2-minute testimony to explain to people what Jesus has done in their life. And I was thinking about mine, and mine's a little lengthier, really. It's about as short as I got it down to when I tried. It was maybe 7 minutes at best. There's a lot of different ways you can go with it. I don't want to distract with all the ways that he's helped, because it can get muddled. But if I had to think about just sharing my testimony and the difference before Jesus and after Jesus, one thing that really sits with me is, but before Jesus, I had a lot of thoughts in my head that would just, sometimes they would bug me, sometimes they torment me. It just depends. It wasn't always bad, but there was always a little voice, little worries, little stresses in my head. To the point that when I went to lay down at night, like a lot of people, I had to have something on to distract. I had to have not just a fan, but like a radio. I had to have music playing. I had to have TV going. I had to watch a show and like pass out. I couldn't lay down and close my eyes and fall asleep because of all the stresses in my life. I had to pass out distracted every night. Now, since I've had Jesus, since I've been saved, and when I focus on him, and when I focus on what he's done, and how this is all his plan, I can lay there with no radio, no music, no TV, and I could just drift off to sleep and trust that he's got everything. And that's that peace of mind when I fall asleep is the difference that I have in Jesus. I love y'all. He loves y'all.